Alright then, lads, ladies, and those of us who know better. My name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and welcome back to Bold and Bright. If you hear any background noise, it's because I just got off a thing with a WhatsApp group, and one of our bits might have gotten a little bit out of hand. I have no regrets about that whatsoever, it's great. This episode's going to be even more unhinged than usual because over the course of a long weekend, I have done a lot of things that use up spoons, and in an hour I am leaving for the Paddy's Day parade. This is Paddy's Day at time of recording, by the way. So I do not have a whole lot of brain power, and also I think I managed to sprain my ankle in my sleep, which I didn't even know was possible. So, the subject of today's episode is be lazy. I'm not joking, be lazy. And we're getting right into the biscuits. So, I am chronically ill, I'm disabled, I've got quite a few things wrong with me, and get this, I'm gonna have to say the S word right now. A lot of them are self-diagnosed. Because the healthcare system is a bloody nightmare, and it is especially difficult to get them to treat young AFAB people with any kind of seriousness. Long story short, this is probably going to have to be a subject for a future video, but got into a little bit of an accident when I was 11. That didn't work out too well for me. And I got misdiagnosed as having a teeny tiny boo-boo kept overnight and then sent back home. Turns out, once my mom dragged me back to that hospital, turns out I needed a 3-week stay. And it was very serious. And they sent me home the first time. Ugh. Since it's so hard to get them to take even physical, very, very obvious injuries seriously, you can imagine how hard it would be going in and saying, "Hi, so I've got this one weird thing and I'm not sure what's up with it, and also I'm supposedly in the prime of my life, but I get out of bed in the morning and go, my hip. Do you have any meds for that?" As it is, I'm on rather a lot of meds, but anywho. And for the most part, a lot of what I've got is classified under invisible illnesses. So I'm autistic, first and foremost. That's a major disability. It impacts a lot of things for me. No, I do not want it cured. I'm very happy being autistic, but the fact of the matter is that most public places are not autism accessible. Why does every shop need to have a radio going full whack and giant fluorescent lights? Why? Also, they're huge. So it's really annoying having to hobble around and go and walk a couple kilometers just to get from the bread aisle to I don't know, whatever other aisles I've got. I don't go into shops often enough for this. I don't have the layouts memorized. And so the assumption when people see an invisibly disabled person is, oh, they must be mostly fine, right? If it's not affecting them that much. Physically, it is not very obvious that I'm disabled. Apart from the walking stick, which I have had people ask why I really need it. Someone even thought that I was using it for decoration. I mean, yes, it's a really pretty walking stick, but still! I have to do everything one-handed. It's not the most convenient accessory. The disability or whatever that I think affects me the most is actually just the chronic fatigue. Fun fact about me, about a year ago, I just decided, frick it, I am not getting enough energy or respite or whatever. I'm going to try to squeeze in a 20-minute nap every day. And I felt so guilty about that because there are people working, the people doing the 40-hour work weeks or the night shifts or whatever. It felt like they had a right to be tired or to take a nap, or that wheelchair users or people who were more obviously disabled had the right to take a nap when they needed to. When I did it, it felt either that I was a wee granda that needed to take his afternoon nap, or that I was just being lazy. And that brings me back to my point. Laziness is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, I'm not even sure if laziness is the right word. The thing with laziness is that you're not meant to feel bad when you're being lazy. So sitting around looking at something, sitting around doom scrolling through your phone and thinking, I have stuff to do, I have stuff to do, I have stuff to do, I need to stop doing this, I need to stuff to do, but my legs hurt and I have a headache and I feel bad and I can't get off Pinterest. That is not laziness. God, I watched a very good video by Jessica Kelgren-Fozzard where she was picking apart some of P.T. Barnum's whole mess, and she discussed right at the end that the whole idea of us having to be productive comes from a deeply, deeply ableist, consumerist, capitalist mess. The idea is that we're meant to wear ourselves out so much working because we have to work that by the time we get home we're too tired to do anything else, we consume more, and then we go to bed and we repeat the process all over again. Doesn't sound like a very fun existence, does it? Just flashing back briefly to my school days, I didn't know that I had chronic fatigue on top of everything else. Remember, I didn't tell anyone that I was disabled, physically anyway. So I was just constantly in pain. I had migraines every 2 seconds. And to loop back to that feeling of, oh, other people put up with this, so I should be able to as well. Brace yourself, fellas, but I always had a super rough time with periods. Because they suck so much. And I thought that the norm was just for them to be so debilitating you could basically only curl up on something and try not to die for days on end. And when I say that, like, everything hurt, I couldn't sleep, I was nauseous, my appetite was all over the place, splitting migraines. It eventually got so bad that I wound up collapsing on the floor of my college bathroom. That sucked. And that was kind of the kick I needed to go, right, I can't live my life being basically debilitated for a whole week, a month, when I know that there's an alternative for that. So I eventually just had to go on medication for it. And again, I felt guilty because I'm not actually sure what percentage of the population, menstruates, but it felt like I was just being a little bit overdramatic when, yeah, everyone puts up with them, and there are people doing, like, full-time manual labor. There were flippin' astronauts that went into space and got their periods. Like, why am I being so dramatic about this? The answer is I wasn't being dramatic. I was in genuine pain and could barely keep my eyes open. That was not fun. But the idea of being in pain is so normalized and even romanticized. What most able-bodied people don't want to think about is that nearly all of us are going to be disabled by some point. Some of us already are, but think about what happens when you get older. Once you factor in just physical wear and tear on your body, chronic pain, arthritis, eye problems, ear problems, intestine problems, a lot of people wind up with cancer. I mean, I don't mean to get too completely grim on this, but we all age. And age has a funny thing of chipping away at your little immune system and making you have to take a lot of hospital trips, and people ask you if you've been drinking enough water a lot. I think I've brought up before that I wound up disowning my entire extended family because, they weren't great, and I ran into a problem a lot of saying, like, oh, I'm tired, or I'm having this physical symptom. A physical symptom that came from my CPTSD was feeling like I was covered in bruises all the time. I'm not even sure what crazy brain chemistry mixed with something physiological caused that, but as you can imagine, that was quite painful. It made getting comfy hard, it made moving hard. Nowadays, that has toned down a little bit, but if I get triggered, it literally feels like I've been kicked in the ribs by a horse. It is not fun. And then I would have someone from my extended family, who most of which are literal athletes, say, oh yeah, I nearly got bludgeoned to death at a hurling match, and okay, hurling is basically really aggressive Irish hockey, okay? It wasn't, not the other meaning of hurling, this is a different one. And then I would feel guilty that I was complaining about something that wasn't even that visible. This has turned more into a rant than anything constructive, but I think it's important for people to share their experiences because a huge factor in me finally getting the help to sort out some of my, to help with some of my disabilities was a certain YouTube channel called Oakworm, which is ran by this wee dude Victor. I can't remember exactly what he's got, but he's autistic, he's physically disabled, and he talks a lot about queer stuff. And there's a story he told about accepting his limits, so he's got issues with his joints. Like, some days he can kind of hobble around, some days he uses the cane, some days he uses the crutches, some days he uses the wheelchair, some days he's bedbound. Because people who sometimes have to use certain mobility aids exists. People under the age of 70 can use mobility scooters. I wish that was more common knowledge. But back to my point, he mentioned that a while after one of his health issues, he took, like, the world's lightest jog in a garden and realized that, oh, that is basically the most amount of physical activity he can probably do. And that's fine. He felt happy doing that really light jog. I'm going to introduce you to a wee phrase that you're going to have to excuse my language for, but, well, it makes sense. It's inspiration porn. Which is taking a disabled person's story and trying to twist it to make able-bodied neurotypical people feel better about themselves. You know, there's like really slushy articles like, boy with autism does literally anything. Or, more often, boy with autism's mother does literally anything. And it turns into a big thing of, look how brave this person is for doing X, Y, and Z. Isn't it so wonderful? And of course, they wouldn't have been able to do it without their fabulous doctors and caregivers. And it doesn't feel like it's coming from a genuine place. Doing anything when you're disabled is an accomplishment, but we want to tell those stories ourselves. We want to be able to say, like, I got in a bus today and I wasn't even that lightheaded and I only needed to sleep for 6 hours after that. And to get a, woo, good job, I hope you feel better soon. Because we get it. We know how that feels. But the stories where it's, this person with a disability went on a talk show and talked about how brave they were. And then absolutely no mention of the full week they are going to have to take to recover from that. I'm planning a trip in June. And I know, because I'm having to factor it into my plans, that I'm going to need to rest a lot. Because I'm going somewhere busy. And there's going to be a lot of walking involved. Why do airports have to be so big? And I guess the reason I'm making this episode at all is because I don't want other people to have to feel guilty for just resting. I have a badge on my battle jacket that says respect our rest. It doesn't matter if your disability is visible or not. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. We all deserve to be able to rest. Okay, I had to drop out of college because my health started giving out, and now I'm unemployed. I work from home. I'm on benefits, and yes, I'm young. And the flack I get for not being able to work, not being able to get an education. I never finished secondary school. And, not being able to drive, shopping independently is very difficult for me. And yes, my disabilities are manageable. I'm not bedbound or anything. But they are hard, and some days are harder than others. In fact, while I'm recording this, I have a hot lemon beside me, which is literally just lemonade with painkillers in it, because I'm not having a fabulous pain day, and I felt a headache coming on before I started recording this. There's a real tendency with disabled people to mask, where we think something is too inconvenient. I was at the Welcome to Night Vale live show over the weekend, which was one of the things that used up a lot of spoons, but I really enjoyed, and I got talking to some cosplayers at the entrance. They were fabulous, but one of them told me that they had left their walking stick at home, and I can't remember the exact reason they gave. It was something about, like, maybe it being, I think it was that it didn't match their cosplay, but then we got talking about how I didn't used to take my walking stick on buses, or for a lot of things, really. I wouldn't use my walking stick if I was out by myself, because I thought it would make me an easy target for getting jumped. Yeah, disabled life isn't particularly pretty. We have to worry about things like that. Nowadays, I do. I've got enough confidence in myself to be able to go around with my walking stick by myself, because the amount of independence it gives me is insane. And yes, I can technically still run if it's a good paint day. Like, if I need to escape some crazy rain, I can hobble a bit faster. But it almost feels wrong when you're a mobility aid user to use your mobility aids. Like, I get embarrassed in public where I might just have to put up a picture of my walking stick so you can see what I'm talking about. It's got a strap at the top that I usually just, like, wind up wearing on my elbow like a purse if I need two hands for something. Then I'm usually standing on one leg like a flamingo. But even then, I feel bad because, well, I didn't need to use my walking stick for 3 seconds. I also tend to just hold it when I'm going downstairs because, well, my balance isn't great, and the last thing I need to do is trip over my own walking stick and fall. Just because my coordination isn't quite there to move 3 limbs down the stairs. What do you know? I genuinely thought this was going to be a mini episode until I forgot what I was until I went off on so many tangents. This is not going to be the last episode about disability, you can be sure about that. And if by chance you're not a disabled person listening to this, or you're neurotypical, don't assume you know what we're capable of, or what we're not capable of. Ages ago, I was sitting with a group, and they talked about a woman that they knew who was blind, and then they made the case that she must obviously be faking getting blind because she can get on a bus by herself. Wow. It's almost like you associate disability with helplessness, so you think everyone who isn't helpless must not be disabled. Which is ableist as feck, you idiots. So in summary of all that, just, if you're spending time with a disabled person, whether it's a coworker, friend, your kid, anything like that, just ask them. Ask them, just politely or whatever, like, oh, do you want to take the lift or the stairs? Would you rather turn the light off? Just learn little things, and I swear to God, it makes our lives so much easier. And you know what? We deserve to have easier lives. Not because life is inherently hard, but because for us it's harder when all of the shops are inaccessible. Yeah. Or you have to be on multiple medications, but the side effects of them are crazy. My anxiety meds mixed with my antidepressants makes me super lightheaded. So if I don't want to pass out in the shop, I just have to, walk a little bit slower, make sure the blood isn't going to my thing. Okay, yep, need to sit down now. And that's not something you'd notice. Like, visually, there's no big neon sign that says, I get lightheaded or not. But it's something I have to be aware of unless you want me passing out on the bus. Whew, not really sure how to wrap this up. I guess, don't be ableist, rest when you need to. You're not a burden to society. Society can just sometimes be a dick. So, outro. I've got a Tumblr blog. I'm at Blue, Bold, and Bright. Go check out Jessica Kellgren-Fozard and Victor from Oakworm. I'll link both of their channels in the description. I think that might be literally it. Happy very, very late Paddy's Day by the time this comes out. Next episode will probably be about a big project I've got coming up, so stay tuned for that. By the way, this podcast comes out every 2 weeks. See you 2 Fridays from now. So, my name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and this has been Bold and Bright.